Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week with some brand new music. This one from a band I don't think I've heard before, though they are signed by Napalm Records. I guess they are a bit of a bigger band. We're looking at the group Frozen Crown. They just released a new song, or maybe just a music video this week, titled I Am the Wind. And we're going to be looking at that. So, let's dive into it, see what Frozen Crown is bringing to the table today. Nice harmony on the guitar line. Those two eighth notes to the quarter note on the bass kick. Nice way of providing a ton of energy, keeping the song moving forward. Rhythm of the band pushing the song forward, allowing the vocals to be a little bit more slower in their delivery. Very cool jump up there. Oh, there's some strings around the outside too. So we take a little bit of bite off of the guitar from the post-chorus to open up room for the vocals here. It's a good decision. I love how this melody opens up there. A lot of it's right around here. And then that one bar kind of punches the pitch up a bit, gives it tons of energy. Push through the end of the verse to bring us into the chorus. Are there 3 guitarists in here? Nice. Harmonizing on top of that. Got some classic metalcore guitar work here. Yeah, putting this nice legato melodic stuff on top of the pedal tone chugging. I do like that. The rise up to the highest and then the slide down just a half step to resolve it. Give it that feeling of finality. Yeah, very epic guitar riff right there. Napalm, man, why you always do that? Oh, man. I barely got to hear the end of the song, already throwing me in another one. Alright, so here's something pretty cool, right? What I really like about this is that it's an interesting mix of what I would say is more heavy driving metalcore riffage and more open and epic power metal melodies, and bringing the two of those together into something that has a lot of drive to it but still feels larger than life. It's a very cool combination. We could actually hear it, was it right there at the end? Although I think also coming into the final chorus there, I mentioned it, where we had that heavy pedal tone usage in the guitar riffage with the fast hammer-ons and pull-offs. Always coming back down to that pedal tone, and then a cool little like hit a note, go above it, bring it back down kind of movement. Doing that really quickly. But then on top of that, we have these large, epic, wider harmonic melodies that feel very powerful and almost victorious in some places. There's an adventurous element to it. It doesn't have that rule of cool metal sound to it anymore. Where, yeah, I mean, it drives. It's got a little bit of that angst to it. It just sounds cool. This sounds epic. And bringing those two flavors together, I think works really well in here. On top of the other element that I think is key to this song is the pop style vocals. I had mentioned this a little bit in the reaction, but in the verse, a lot of the vocal melody sits in a small range. We're only talking, I don't know, 4 notes in total, maybe 5 tops. It really has a home note, and we kind of deviate a couple pitches higher and a couple pitches lower, and it just kind of resides in this one little area. This is something pop music does a lot, of simplification of melody in order to make it memorable, to make it become an earworm, that kind of idea. And we actually have quite a bit of that in the verse. What I love, though, is bringing in some of the powerful belts that power metal is known for. And towards the end of the verse, I think it is, I don't know, it's about 60% in, we have 2 bars where the vocalist jumps up about a fifth, and we end up actually hearing an octave above the lowest tone in the original group of notes. And it's a very powerful moment. It allows the melody to kind of break outside of that very small boundary that they've created and explore something else, which is a feeling, to me at least, of breaking free of the thing that power metal does really well, which is this adventure, larger than life, getting away from the mundane. And I love how we kind of take a more traditional, modern melody for the verse, solidify that as the template, and then towards the end of the verse, break out of that and defy the expectations that they've set up themselves. I think that's very cool. There is a double-edged sword to this, though. That moment in the verse, other than the extended outro of the chorus that we see on chorus 2 and 3, the chorus that takes us into the bridge and the chorus that ends the song on, the chorus never quite hits those same highs that we saw in that one section of the verse. And so as far as vocal intensity, as far as energy and impact, as far as pitch goes, the chorus feels lower energy than that part of the verse. And maybe if that part of the verse was at the beginning rather than towards the end of the verse, it wouldn't feel this way because we would have more time away from it. But we would also lose this idea of expectation subversion as well. So what we end up with, though, is this feeling of normalcy, normality, for the verse, an explosion out of that feels high intensity, a return back to it, and then a chorus that sort of sits within that same sound that we've already solidified in the verse. And I find that to be a bit anticlimactic for the chorus then. It just doesn't sound as triumphant or as large as I think a chorus typically should. Now, we are looking at a very typical role for a chorus. The cool thing about art is you can break rules all the time and still create awesome stuff. In fact, some of the best art out there is the ones that go against the grain and do things differently. So I'm not saying that this would have immediately been better or that it is worse off because of what they chose to do here, or that it would have been better if they had gone for a more explosive chorus. But it does feel like the chorus is supposed to be bigger, and I'll explain that in a second, but it just never quite feels like it hits that energy because the chorus isn't the peak of the song. It ends up feeling lesser than compared to that moment in the verse. So, like I said, a bit of a double-edged sword. I love what the verse does. I like this feeling of breaking free from a routine, but it ends up undermining the chorus because the chorus decides to sit with what the verse was doing anyways. And I think it would have been kind of cool to introduce, instead of around the 60% mark, to introduce around the 80% mark, and maybe the last 2 or 3 bars of the verse, this idea of pushing past the boundaries that we've created, and then using that energy to move into a chorus that was, using the energy that we've used here. Dang, I am not speaking well. To use that energy coming out of the verse to hit a new height, a new peak in the chorus, that takes this concept of breaking free from the mundane and running with it. That's really what I would have loved to see here. I can't wait to get into the lyrics. Maybe those will back me up on this too. Maybe not. But if this song is anything about adventure or epic or going against the grain or breaking free of mundanity or anything along those lines, I will feel really justified in wanting the chorus to be larger and more impactful than I think it ended up being. Now, I mentioned that I do think the chorus is supposed to be big, and here's why. There's an interesting thing happening in the production here. As far as instrumentation, I feel like in the chorus, the band gets flattened out a little bit. In the verse, in the intro, we heard these harmonized lines coming from the guitars. Now, I think there's 3 guitars in here. At least I think I saw 3 guitars in the music video. However, I only ever heard 2 unique guitar lines. Most of the time, all the guitars sound like they're playing the same thing. Occasionally, we will get one harmonized layer off of that, which makes me think 2 of the guitars are playing the lower part, 1 of the guitars is playing the higher part of the harmony. But that was the extent of that, which kind of made me wonder why there's 3 guitarists. But I'm going to get into that in a little bit with my criticism. It's a little further down the line, though. Anyways, when we get to the chorus, everything sort of flattens out, and the guitars are all playing the same thing. The bass is playing the same thing except pedal tone. The drums kind of lighten up a little bit. We had this cool chugging groove energy with those 2/8 notes and a quarter note on the bass kick. Dun 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 dun. Kind of gives this galloping feeling to it. Has that energy driving forward. The drums kind of pull back a little bit too, and that's because the chorus introduces more vocals. We have to get rid of some stuff to introduce that. And I even mentioned this in the reaction, but after the first post-chorus, the guitars are very powerful, very dominant in the mix, and as soon as we move into verse 2, the guitars lose a little bit of that bite, a little bit of that presence in order to make room for the vocals. So there are already indications that the production is changing and softening up the metallic elements of the band to make room for vocals. So I don't think I'm wrong when I say that the instruments kind of take a back seat to the vocals in the chorus because we are adding even more vocals. And you might think that we're just adding one more, the male vocals that sit under the female vocals, but that's actually not true. The more that I listened, the more I could hear at least a 4-voice stack. We also bring in The strings on the outside of the band, they need room to exist as well. Basically, the metal element of the song is being reduced further and further down to make room for all these other elements. On the one hand, yeah, that's what you have to do. When you add layers, you need to reduce the focus on other layers. But I'm not sure that it ends up working well because, and I think this is really important here, the chorus ends up feeling very flat. And I don't think this is necessarily an element of making room for instruments, but I think it's a general compression thing. I kind of felt this already with the first verse, and I ended up turning my volume up a couple of times, and I placed it a bit higher than I normally listen to music, hoping that the sound would eventually feel full. And it never really quite got there. I'm curious if anybody else feels the same way about this song. Let me know in the comments. But the production always felt a bit flat to me. It just never quite had the expressiveness and the largeness of sound that I would expect, especially from the chorus. We're talking about adding strings and adding 3 extra vocal stems to this, and yet it feels just as large and sometimes even smaller than the chorus. I feel like there's just a bit too much compression on this, and I don't know, I'm not a production guy, so it's hard for me to put into words how I think I would fix this, because anytime I mix my own stuff, I find out that I'm just making it worse. I'm definitely a composition guy first. And I think the composition here is actually solid when I listen to the guitars and the bass and the drums and listen to how they're all rhythmically working with each other. When I listen to the beautiful harmonic stack of vocals that we have here, I think that works really well. I like that melody on top of the metal instrumentation. The strings on the outside are kind of generic, just harmonic work. I would have liked some melody out of that, but generally speaking, I think it worked rather well and adds a nice texture to the entire thing. Just, it doesn't feel like it's as large as it should be. And so I think this is actually the problem right here. It's not so much that we have that moment in the verse that elevates it, it's that the chorus feels weak production wise. And I really would have liked something with a little bit less compression, a little bit more room, and a way to showcase more of the coloring of the entire band rather than flattening it all down, kind of opening up the sound sphere and providing more room for all of this extra instrumentation. I also feel like, just on a complete side note here, there's not a lot of bass presence in here, and ends up feeling a bit empty on the low end. And when you flatten out the high end, especially in the guitars to bring in the room for the vocals, the instrumental part just ends up feeling very small. And for something like this, that's supposed to be, powerhouse metal, it's power metal, right? So you need the anger and the grit of the heavier, more aggressive riffs, but you also need the expressiveness of the power metal riffs. Both of those require weight and size, and this song just kind of doesn't deliver on them. But again, I really think that's a production thing. I don't want to throw the engineer under the bus or anything like that. But I do think that on paper, this is a really solid song. I think live, this would be phenomenal. This studio recording just isn't working for me, unfortunately. Now, I mentioned guitars, and I was going to get to this eventually. I like the guitar solo. I think it's rather tasteful. It does pretty much work with fast movement for a majority of its time, leaning more towards the shred, but I think that it does encompass and embody that adventurous spirit of the song to break free out of more mundane ideas and find an epic expressiveness of oneself. I think the solo does a great job of taking that core theme and crafting a melody to follow it through. But I think that's the only time that the guitar work really spoke to me. I had mentioned that I like the metalcore riffs with the power metal melodies on top of it. I think that works well, but I just would have liked to hear a little bit more leaning into this. There's 3 guitars in this band. Very few bands have an opportunity to do cool things with 3 melody lines. We could have had three-way harmonies throughout this song. We could have had counterpoint alongside the vocals. I mean, you're bringing in string instruments. You're bordering on symphonic metal realm. And when I think of symphonic metal, I think of symphonies, I think of classical music. There's a lot of room to use the amount of instruments and voices that you have in the band to great effect. And I feel like having two vocalists and three guitarists, the song just ends up feeling a bit underwhelming melodically to me. There's a lot of opportunity for counterpoint, for call and response, for expressive and expansive harmonic stacks, which we did get in the chorus. I don't want to undermine that. We did have those 4 or 5 vocal stacks, and it did create a very rich harmony there. I love that. I would have loved to hear more of that from the guitars, rather than just stop at the core riff and then a harmony on top of that. Put another harmony on top of that. Have one of the guitars play a riff that the other two aren't. Create that counterpoint, especially in the moments where your vocalist isn't singing. Because, at that point, I understand writing counterpoint is difficult. Writing three-way counterpoint, two guitars doing two totally different things, and your vocalist laying down another melody, yeah, not everyone can do that in every song and have it sound fantastic. I get that. Play within, your strengths. But, to me, there's 2 reasons to have 3 guitars. 1, to write 3 distinct parts. 2, to make a really big sound, which is what metalcore used to use 2 to 3 guitarists for, especially with that early metalcore sound in the 2000s. This song doesn't have that big production, and it doesn't have the multiple guitar parts. So again, I'm failing to see why we need the 3 guitarists. And I think I would have just really loved some really cool expressive and complex melodic writing on this. And I think it would have done a great job of adding to this idea of subverting expectations, of getting outside of the realm of the mundane and doing something neat and expressive and epic and larger than life and better than others. So I think where I'm going to end this analysis segment, moving into the lyrical component, is that this is a fantastic foundation song. I hear a lot of great potential in this band. If this is all that they want to write, this is still a good song. If this is as far as they want to take their compositional skills, I don't think there's anything wrong with this track. It sounds great. It's doing some cool things. And everyone is playing their instruments really well. But I hear potential to take this to the next step and be a band that can test with some of the best, rather than slipping into the cracks and just being another power metal band. We have so many of them. You really need to stand out, especially in post streaming age and post bedroom what do they call them? Bedroom producers. Anyways, it's just so easy to make music nowadays, and there's so much music being put onto the market that you really have to stand out from your contemporaries. And I think this band has the chops to do that, and right now they're sort of just blending in a little bit. So let me hit some lyrics on this and see what's going on. Alright, so my read of the song is being one of epic power, kind of lines up a bit with the song. It's a character narrative song. It explains who somebody is. In a lot of ways, it kind of is an I am song from a musical, which is typically given to villains so that they can describe who they are. Very different from an I want song, typically given to the protagonist as we learn who they are through their actions. It lets us know what they want out of life and creates that internal conflict of what they have versus what they want that drives the rest of the narrative and forces them to change and become someone else as they attempt to achieve their dreams. So this is an I am. And it kind of comes right off the title, I am the wind. But it's about somebody who wants to be a tyrant, who wants to rule the world with power and fear. It says, born in the valley of grief, forged in the flames by his will, as the tyrant my father and God gave life to me as his son. Born without sin, recast in steel, thunder and rain will bend at my command. The head of a legion of newborn undead, firmly I stand before the attack. It says, I am the wind, the storm that set light to the dark, the blazing reaver, the bane of ether. I am the king, the flame that set fire to the stars, exiled from heaven to shine forever. This is powerful words. That part I just said is the chorus. Yeah, this would have sounded so good with a more dynamic mix to it, I think. And I think just having the vocal stack here works really well too, because it kind of sets this person up as kind of beyond human. Humans are monophonic creatures. There are some vocalists who can sing in multiple pitches at one time, but it's more of a rarity. Most humans have one pitch at a time. And so to layer this up with both the male and the female vocals, and then the extra stems from each of them doing backing tracks of themselves, it creates this otherworldly entity to it, which this person feels like from the words too. It talks about silvery scales as their flesh and having an icy spear in their hand. It talks about being consumed by the flames during their fall from grace, that they're a heavenly sinner. They're both hunter and prey, demon and god, villain and saint. I really like this duality, pointing out that they are both of these two opposite things, which I think works well with the vocal stack in the chorus, once again pushing it beyond just a single identity. There's a lot of cool things going on with that. But yeah, then we have the guitar solo and then the pre-chorus and chorus, which we've already ran through once here. It's about this dude who has an undead legion. Yeah, he was in heaven. He fell from... Actually, this is Lucifer, isn't it? Yeah, started as an angel, fell from heaven, and then ruled over the damned. I don't know if that's necessarily who they're talking about. Maybe they use that as a jumping off point for their own character here, but that's what we have. I really would have liked the song to just lean into that a little bit more and focus on some of the grandiose elements that this person has, whether they really are this large and powerful or if it's just the way they perceive themselves. They have an inflated ego. Having that component in the song I think would have worked well, but they already are leaning into this epic, larger than life component rather well, which is what I said earlier. If this is all that they want to write, if this is, if they're happy with this, 100%, they're doing a great job at creating this vibe. I really could hear an extra 10% on this to turn it into something really fantastic. Standing a foot above their peers. Those are my thoughts on Frozen Crown's I Am the Wind. What are yours, though? Do you have anything to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? Do you have your own perspective or opinion on this track? Put all that stuff down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. That wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow. We're going to check out an entire album. Sunday, we have the live stream in the morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And then Monday, we'll be back with next week's theme. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.